Good evening, everybody. With a quorum of members present and the time having arrived, I'll call the Finance Committee meeting for Tuesday, November 26, 2019 to order. The first item on our agenda is discussion and possible action regarding sole source purchases related to the construction of Fire Station Number 2. You'll see documentation in your packets for a number of items like the alerting system, gear lockers, furniture, some of those things that they've documented in their packet materials to indicate that they would like to see some consistency with equipment that they already own. We do have the fire chief with us tonight if there's questions. Does anyone have questions for Chief Kujawa about the sole source on those equipment items? If not, is there a oh, go ahead, Dennis.
If the chief would step forward, I would inquire. I read the documentation here, and I just have some questions. I mean, we're looking at a lot of money here. I mean, we're not looking at $6 for a desk.
No, you're right.
So we are sure that, as far as the alerting system and some of the other stuff, I'm kind of good with that, kitchen equipment, but the furniture, what is the purpose of only not going out for bids on the furniture? I just don't understand why it has to be consistent with what we have in other stations. I mean, a chair is a chair, and a bed is a bed, and a table is a table, and so on.
Yeah, and Ryan Barkowiak recommended this. He's obviously services the whole city with furniture, and it's not just in particular our other two stations, but it's with the whole city. So if he's got parts for certain types of chairs within the city and he's got to repair one or have one repaired, or the parts or the furniture is interchangeable. Now they make desks that have several different parts of a desk. So they have, overhead cabinets, they have a desk, they have filing cabinets, things like that. And he insists on the fact that all those different things are compatible. So if he's got a piece of furniture at a different department that they want to get rid of, and we have the same type of furniture within our department and we need it, they actually fit together. So that's kind of how he explained it to me.
Okay. It always bothers me when we're spending, over $50,000 that we just don't get some competitive quotes and so on. I'm sure you can understand my position on this. Who is this person that made this recommendation? Is he on staff here in the city, or?
Brian is our maintenance supervisor for the city, and he works with furniture with every department and has for years.
Okay, I was unaware of that. So it is his feeling that we should stick with I don't know who the vendor is now, who we buy our furniture from now.
It's the Environments, it's a Herman Miller product, and it's called Environments, is where he's gotten the city's furniture in the past. It's a local vendor within the area.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Okay. With that, is there a motion then to approve sole source on these items? Motion by Nutting, is there a second? Second by Lawrence. Further discussion or questions? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None are opposed. That motion carries. Item number 2 is discussion and possible action regarding the purchase of 2 new fire engines through the Houston-Galveston Area Council Cooperative Purchasing Program. And you've got some documentation in your packets talking about the benefits of cooperative purchasing versus us trying to write a spec sheet for a fire engine that would be unique to Wausau. And there's some economies of scale here that it appears can save us a whole lot of money versus trying to compare apples and oranges with the different equipment manufacturers. Deputy Chief Bartek has been working on this. Does anyone have questions for him on the Houston-Galveston cooperative program, or about the engines or the need? I think he's got some decent documentation in here for us. Go ahead, Mr. Nutting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did get a lot of my questions answered earlier with just some casual thoughts, but maybe you could give us a brief description or the history of this Houston-Galveston. How did this conglomerate or organization develop itself, and the positives here? And
Sure. Mark Hansen and I have been working hand in hand on this the entire way. Obviously, We're very interested in a fire truck that's going to service the city and serve our needs very well. Mark's the fleet manager, so he's the one that's going to make sure that this truck suits the mechanical needs and it fits into his budget and other things like this. How we came to this Houston Galveston purchasing consortium is it's one of the largest ones in the country that's being used for fire apparatus right now. And you really see municipalities moving away from the spec bid process to this process because it allows us to compare a true comparison of what these, in this case, an engine is. So what it is as these manufacturers are entering their costs in, every one of these trucks is going to have a Cummins diesel engine in it. So that's this, say, manufacturer's cost for that diesel engine in his truck. Now, the other one you can compare, and all those parts build up, and then you can begin looking at the other things that are proprietary to each of the manufacturers. So we've been doing actually an exhaustive search since probably, I think, May. We began a process of looking at all the different manufacturers, what we needed best to service, not the city just today, but the city 15 years from now, because we hope we can extend the life of these engines from what we have right now. And that's how we arrived at this Houston Galveston Consortium. So it's a consortium that, as I understand it, began so governments could get what they call best value in government pricing. And you see a lot occurring at federal level where they don't have to try to write a bid sheet that is almost impossible to compare. I'll let Mark expound further on that subject.
Well, basically, what I want to add to it is that we have purchased a couple of sweepers through that same consortium last year. And in order to do that, it freed us up from the time taken to write specs and everything. Because what we did with that was we had a demo day basically at DPW when we compared those sweepers. We had all the manufacturers side by side, and that allowed us to look at these things in a little better light, you know, knowing that we could buy off of that rather than sitting down and trying to write specs and that. And this would be the same way. We have taken time, we've made trips to different places to look at the different fire trucks and come to the conclusion that there's probably two different brands that we would really seriously look at, you know, as far as purchasing off of this. And most of these companies do allow that too. They've got different pricing structures for their different fire trucks. And the pricing now is pretty transparent between the different vendors. Because everybody kind of knows how much, you know, each other, you know, their prices are. So that's where, you know, basically we're bringing this forward, like it says in the pamphlet, you know, mostly for transparency purposes, so that we know, you know, or so that you guys know that we're doing our due diligence to find the best product out there. And right now, in Bob's summary of why we're wanting to do this is because right now, we had budgeted for one fire engine in 2020, but being that it takes a year roughly to get a fire truck, we're going to try and buy 2 units at the same time, mostly because of the fact that we've got a couple of older units that are just, they're in pretty tough shape. We've stuck so much money into these things that we have to do what we can to get these things cycled out. And the main reason being is that these are older trucks on a commercial chassis that just don't hold up very well, and the emission systems on these things, it's early emissions. I could probably go on and on for hours and bore you about the emissions on these things, but I won't do that. But that's basically the majority of the problems that we've been having with these 2 older units. So we're looking at, you know, buying 2, because like Bob said, we could save a lot of money by buying 2 at the same time.
So you'd have the engineering costs of one
Correct.
stretched over 2 vehicles. But is there a way that, are other communities also where, let's say, if you have several communities and we got 10 of these engines that are pretty much alike being built, is that part of what this cooperative or consortium can?
They do, some of the manufacturers have, so say some of the language they call is a fast track engine. So and what we're talking about here is purchasing an engine, which is the pumper, so one you see most commonly on the road. And so it is a set configuration. This is what we build, and we think it should cover, you know, 60% of our customers. And we've looked at some of those. It just falls short in a couple areas for what we want. And so what we're doing is we're taking one of those, which is a fairly standard engine with a a few customizable features on it, but for the most part, it's very much a cookie-cutter engine from the manufacturer that we'd like to look at.
I do like the idea of, in your narrative, it talked about minimizing the amount of, or the quantity of proprietary parts.
Yes.
So that you can fix them a lot easier. That makes a ton of sense, rather than to have something out of service waiting for an order.
Yeah.
The other thing is that if the consortium still allows you to buy from major manufacturers, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, rather than you trying to compare through your own spec sheet what you can get from Oshkosh, what you can get from Pierce, whatever.
Yep.
And then, I guess take a base engine and build up to meet your needs, rather than try to spec the whole thing and then
Yeah.
compare apples and oranges. I think there's a lot of time and money to be saved by your approach. Linda?
Question, does HGAC get a fee, like based on the size of the order, or is it a subscription
This
to
is
be
my-
able to
it's my
use their
understanding that
services?
It's a $2,000 upfront buy-in to get into the HGAC, and we were looking at it, apparently, City of Wausau already has
Okay.
a membership in this. I'm not sure what was purchased in the past underneath the HGAC. I'm not sure if that needs to be updated, but it was nominal cost. They do not get a percentage of the cost of the engine. It is simply a consortium and database.
Like a
of
membership
purchasing.
type thing. Sure.
Exactly.
And then a question for Mary Ann, and I maybe should know this. We used to take 3 years to kind of budget. We'd save for an engine and, and then take a couple more years. What's the plan for 2 of these?
So we moved the fire department onto the motor pool, and so now the motor pool fund finances those purchases. So I think what they are saying is they would order 2 of them, but it would probably impact 2 different years of budgets because of when they would be delivered to the city. But yeah, they're budgeted through the motor pool fund.
And one other thing too is through this, and purchasing through the company that we're looking at, is we would pay, a certain percentage up front, to get the process going, and then midway through the build cycle, then we pay another amount. And then at the end, when we take delivery, then we pay the final amount. So we can spread those costs out, so it's not a huge impact on the budget. And I have budgeted over the next 2 years, roughly right around $500,000 each for each one of these units. So we've got the money set aside in our capital improvement for the motor pool.
Good. And they have a fairly long life, so that makes sense. Anyone else have questions? If not, is there a motion to approve the use of the cooperative to purchase the 2 engines? Motion by Lawrence, is there a second? Second by Nutting. Further discussion or questions? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None are opposed, motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
So then you won't have to bring out the 1936,
I'd like to see that 36 Persh rolling down the road again, and the steamer that's at the Yawkey Museum, but maybe in a demo format.
Maybe only. Let's see, item number 3 is discussion and possible action on sole source purchase of 2 police dogs and related training equipment from Von Leash Kennels Incorporated. Obviously, we've got some documentation in the packets on that as well, and it sounds like they've used Von Leash before for the other dogs, and it looks like they've got some grant funding, but they need to pay for the training and the lodging and a few of those things. Deputy Chief Barnes is here to walk us through this. Welcome.
Thank you. Let me just preference this by saying it's one of my responsibilities at work to make sure the right hand talks to the left hand, and I know what's going on. So
We like when that happens.
this is in front of the Finance Committee because I screwed up. I made the assumption that a sole source went through the chief and through Mary Ann, who had the authority to approve this sole source without coming to the Finance Committee. We purchased 2 dogs, and our guys are at training with them right now, but that sole source never made it to Mary Ann for her approval. So it only made sense that I agreed that this come before you guys at this point. We were in need of 2 dogs in order to maintain our 4 drug detection dogs as a result of retirements of the dogs and/or the handlers and the dogs. It just so happens we're very fortunate in this community that an anonymous individual donated a significant amount of money as an endowment to the Community Foundation, which for the sole purpose of funding drug detection canines for law enforcement agencies in Marathon County. We hadn't had to use it last year, any agency, so we were able to use that endowment for the purchase of both of these dogs. In the agreement with the community foundation, the dogs have to come from Von Lick Kennels, which just so happens to be the kennel we've used for at least the last 24 years. That's the only kennel we've used with the exception of a free dog we received that was a war dog that was no longer being used. So we have a tremendous amount of experience with them. They're the organization that comes to Wausau to recertify our dogs annually. We've been very satisfied with their product. What's left for our canine fund to pay for out of this is approximately $18,000. The price of the dog is roughly $10,000 per dog, and the cost to send our officers down there to train with them for about 6 weeks and get the appropriate equipment for those dogs is about an additional $8,000 to $9,000 per dog. So the city's portion of what needs to be covered is that lodging, travel, training of the dogs, not the actual purchase of the dogs.
Okay.
So I screwed up. That's why I'm here.
It's all right. Questions from the committee members? Go ahead, Dennis.
Are these drug detection dogs, or are they your typical police dog that goes out on calls?
Yes, these dogs come to work with their handler 40 hours a week.
Okay, so they're not just used for drug interdiction, they're used if you have to send them out to flush somebody out of a building or so on?
Sure. The two that we're purchasing right now are called dual-purpose dogs. So they serve the purpose of handler protection. They're trained to bite. They also are trained to search and the detection of drugs. We have one other dog just like that that's currently in use right now. And then we have a single-purpose dog, which is simply drug detection.
Okay. Do we get to name the dogs, or are they named already when we get them?
No, I wish we could, but they come named.
Yeah, that's always been a problem. I mean, they have such weird names for dogs nowadays, such general names. Our dog, when I was a police officer, name was Shredder. And you'd be surprised how many people would come out and say, we're going to send in Shredder, and, you know, it's on you after that. Most people would come out with their hands up and so on, but you would say, we're going to send in Reese. Reese, who the hell is Reese? And so on. But if you say Shredder, you get your point across and so on. But I guess we're stuck with it, but they're definitely necessary. I'm glad we're getting them.
I
Good deal.
can tell you that I've seen two things work very effectively. One is they have a command to give the dog in Dutch, and it's for the dog to bark and act vicious to get people to comply while the dog's still on a leash, and that's highly effective. And then when we don't have a dog, I've seen officers say, come out or we're going to send the dog in, and then the officers start barking, and the people also come out with their hands up.
Oh,
So,
jeez.
Maybe you don't want to give that away.
hey,
Hey, whatever works. So,
Ever in a situation like that, I'm going to peek out and see who's barking.
you probably should.
important tip. Do we have a motion from the committee then to approve this expense? Motion by Martin, second by Nutting. Members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye, opposed?
Thank you.
None are opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, item number 4 and 5 are kind of related. Item 4 is discussion and possible action regarding renewal of the Boys and Girls contract, Boys and Girls Club contract for youth development with a formula impact. We've got Kim from Boys and Girls Club with us this evening who'd like to talk about the program a little bit. When we started this with them, as well as Peer Court, one thing we were always concerned with was measurable results and to see what impact they were making out in the community with the kids as we funded their efforts. So Kim's here to talk about that for a little bit, and then we'll take item 5, which is related as well.
Well, first, I'd like to thank you not only for having me tonight, but for your ongoing support and investment in the Boys and Girls Club. When we started this process, the contract was that we would serve at least 1,000 kids, 60% of which were from free and reduced. And I can tell you that over the last 5 years, your investment has helped serve over 3,500 kids, which means that on an annual basis, it's well over 1,000 kids. This year alone was 1,200 kids, excuse me. But what that means is that kids, we are retaining kids, and they're participating with us on an ongoing basis. So you might get your membership as a 6th grader, and then you would stay through your sophomore year of high school. Our goal is obviously to help you get a job and not see you as much as we would normally, but your investment is making a significant difference. One of the parts of Formula for Impact is our academic success program. Our goal with that is to make sure that we are supporting the academic school day, not duplicating services that the schools are offering, but making sure that kids are successful, that they are completing their homework, that they are participating in high-yield learning activities. And on an annual basis, about 700 different kids amongst our 3 sites are participating in those programs. And that's throughout the summer. That's after school during Power Hour. That's in anything from tech lab, which includes hands-on building activities, designing Lego structures, architecture and design, doing science experiments, really engaging activities, getting kids to participate in critical thinking and problem solving either on their own or with their friends or soon-to-be friends. We really focus on peer-to-peer support also for homework. You may have heard about the new math that has come out. That is not our staff's strengths. But our kids really rely on each other either with their Chromebooks or their iPads to become successful. And that is a national movement also to make sure that kids are academically successful. A good character and leadership initiative really not only recognizes our kids through our Member of the Month program, and often kids that don't get recognized at schools, whether they are challenged at school or they are unsuccessful at school during the day, but also kids that are making those investments in themselves through our middle school leadership group and our high school leadership group. On an annual basis, over 300 kids participate in our Good Character and Leadership Initiative, recognizing at least 1 Youth of the Year, usually 3 Youths of the Year from our sites throughout our organization. And just to give you an idea, in our spring of 2019 surveys, 89% of our club members said that the club helps them do better in school. Because of the success of our Good Character and Leadership and academic success, we branched off into a STEAM initiative also, supporting what schools are doing and supporting what our community needs and making sure that kids have access to hands-on experiences. We also launched our Career Launch initiative, making sure that kids are successful in becoming your future employees, future City of Wausau employees. We take the idea that great futures start here far beyond our club walls and make sure that it means in our community. So our goal is continuously to help solve community challenges and issues, whether that's through making sure that we have employees in the future. Our long-term goal is selfishly to grow our own employees. Our club members make our best employees, but also that they have those soft skills, that they know how to fill out a job application, that they don't come to your place of work or your place of employment with in their pajamas and ask for a job application, and that they have those tools, that they can shake your hand, they can look you in the eye, they can present publicly. Hopefully you'll hear from somebody in a couple of weeks at your next council meeting as well. And we really focus on healthy lifestyles. We know in our community, especially in the first couple of months of the school year, that there were some challenges for our kids, not only in choices that they make, whether that's vaping at school or bringing things into the Boys and Girls Club, whatever they have access to in their home or their friends. So on average, about 1,800 kids participate in our Healthy Lifestyle Initiative or programming, and that's everything from small groups with Girls with a Purpose and Guys Only, focusing on decision-making, self-esteem, self-respect, making sure that they know how to have healthy peer relationships, but also focusing on getting kids active. A lot of our kids are addicted to their screens, and so our goal is to make sure that they are running around our beautiful new gym with our new gym floor and painted walls, or that they are learning how to cook. Over 350 kids on an annual basis are learning how to cook, whether that's kitchen safety, how to brown ground beef. You and I may take for granted how to cut a red pepper, but for some kids, they have no idea. How do you carry a knife in a kitchen? How do you fry an egg? We want to make sure that they have those skills that they need to be successful adults. And Formula for Impact really sets them up for that success. So by the time they graduate from high school, they can be self-sustaining adults with employment skills, career readiness skills, academic success, and that they can make those decisions that are right for them, whatever those are, and also so that they understand the consequences of negative decisions. So I know that you haven't received a report since February of 2018, and I apologize for that. Our organization has been through a huge transition in the last 12 months. We have a great new CEO who hopefully you'll meet again at the next city council meeting. He had someplace that he needed to be tonight as well. But we have adopted a new strategic plan that is focused on 2020 to 2022. Focuses on expanding our impact, expanding our transportation options for kids. Right now, we're serving 11 Wausau schools, looking at kids from underserved geographic areas. On an annual basis, we serve about 32 different zip codes, and that's from kids coming into our community and participating in the club. Whether they're visiting grandma, they're visiting the other parent, they're spending the summer with the aunt and uncle, and really making sure that kids across our community in the grades that we serve, 4th through 12th grade, have access to the Boys and Girls Club, free of any barriers, including financial or transportation access.
With that, does anyone have questions? Go ahead, Mr. Nutting.
You just touched on the very last one, transportation access, so this is something new too. You're renting a bus from the schools to both the South Campus and the North Campus, is that, or just to one campus?
Nope, just to the North Second Street. We have, our other two sites are at the DeServis Middle School, and it only serves those middle school students, and right at the Greenheck Fieldhouse, so it serves the junior high and senior high. So transportation is not a problem. And in Weston, transportation becomes a problem for our kids because they claim they can't get to the club unless we provide transportation. Several years ago, we stopped providing transportation after school, and we expected that they would use the city bus system. And they certainly talked with their feet, and they didn't get to the club. And there are lots of options for kids between John Muir and the Boys and Girls Club because there's the transit center stop that they need to make. So, and we hear all the time that my parents won't cross the bridge, which as a parent, I think we just have to cross the bridge, let's get there. But on the other hand, there is that barrier to access. If your family does not have a vehicle, they do not have access, they have one vehicle and they're picking up multiple kids at multiple after-school events. So we made the decision to expand transportation to 11 different schools. We charter with a Lamers bus every day, and then we provide our own school bus as well.
And then lastly, do you have a breakdown briefly, actual city residents versus, are we also assisting in the rural school families? Do you have a?
That's a great question, and I can get you a more specific answer after tonight. I can tell you that during the summer, the Boys and Girls Club serves kids from all over, right? We don't prevent access to any kid. Kids come in from Antigo, from Rhinelander, wherever, but which means that their parents are working here. So while their home zip code may not be Wausau, there's a reason that they're here. They're paying city taxes either through employment, grocery shopping, Target, or not Target, but the mall, Walgreens, wherever it is that they're going. They are utilizing our services because they're here in our community. So whether their address says 01 or 03, I can definitely get that for you.
Thanks.
Okay. Ms. Lawrence and then Dennis.
Just a follow-up question to Alderman Nutting. Do you receive other grants like this from other municipalities or school entities? So we're just kind of one of a string of supporters other than the philanthropy?
Absolutely. So obviously, we are a United Way funded agency as well. We do get investments. We do apply for investments. We never take any investments for granted, but we definitely apply for investments from the Village of Rothschild as well. We are a funded partner with the Wausau School District as well. We receive in-kind support from the DeServis School District as well with space and custodial services. Because we don't have standalone facilities there, we thankfully don't have to worry about that overhead or that additional cost. And then we look at ongoing grants, whether it's through corporations or businesses in town. Our breakdown is about $300,000 to $350,000 that we receive in grant funding on an annual basis.
Sure.
Do you ever have to turn, children away because you're full?
At this point, not yet. And while we don't want to turn kids away, our goal is obviously to serve more. On a daily basis during the summer, you'll see anywhere between 130 and 220 kids in our building. And it's quite a range because it just depends on what kids have going on. We are working with the school district to figure out how to get kids and making recommendations to their bus plan for after summer school so they can go to summer school but get to the Boys and Girls Club sooner so they can participate in more opportunities. We are also working with the district to figure out how we can get to how we can connect with them to help support the kids differently and make a deeper impact. Also looking at their academic success, what does that mean for our staff? Can we have our, and it's really just a very early conversation, so I'll tell you more about that later if that comes to fruition, but that would definitely mean serving more kids, partnering with their after-school programs as well, and things like Community Connections, which provides after summer school activities to kids as well.
Dennis, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some of the services you mentioned, you say you help people make sure they're getting their homework done, you teach them how to brown hamburger and slice of pepper. Isn't that something that kids' parents should be doing?
So that is a great question, and one that we get all the time. And because the definition of family has changed over the years, some of our kids are coming from foster homes. We have kids that move so many times. I can think of one club member that moved 17 times in 18 years. So the idea of family and the idea of home is different for every kid. So we try to step in for kids and families in a way that helps support that helps support where their families are and that supports those kids' needs. My son son is a regular club member, and I am home with him every night. And the idea that he can be reinforced at the Boys and Girls Club, things, life lessons that I try to instill upon him, sometimes it just takes hearing it from somebody else. You could say the same about a foods class in school. They're learning cooking, they're learning kitchen safety, all of that. So we're really supporting and reinforcing what kids are getting from different sources. It takes, sometimes 7 times before something sinks in, and we want to be part of those 7 times.
Well, that doesn't really answer my question. So these people don't have these people you're serving don't have the resources at home? They must have an adult at home somewhere. They're not living on their own. And if they have a foster parent, the foster parents must cook or something. I mean, aren't these people supposed to be providing these services? We're asking the taxpayer to fund services that should be funded by either foster parents or by the children's natural parents.
And like I said, I think every family is different, and every family comes to us at different points in their life. There are some families that have 2 parents at home, where they maybe go home to one parent after school. They're involved in different activities. And we have other kids that there isn't necessarily an adult in their life that's able to do that, whether that's because they're working multiple jobs and they may not be home when kids are home. We have kids that are responsible for getting their siblings up and off to school, making breakfast, all of those types of things. So the range in kids that we serve is wide. We have an average of about 60 to 65% of our kids are reporting that they are from free and reduced households. We have kids that we know are homeless. We have kids that are living in a home, but that is not their own. We have kids that are getting evicted, kids. So every circumstance is different, and we try to approach this as meeting kids where they are and giving them skills that will make them successful adults.
Well, do you have any breakdown of you were talking in the different categories with people that are, kids that are homeless, people that are living in homes that are not their own homes? I mean, do you have a percentage do you serve any just, I guess I'll use the term, regular people that have 2 parents at home and maybe come to the Boys and Girls Club to play basketball or something like that?
We serve kids from all backgrounds. I can tell you of one kiddo who recently transferred to one of our middle schools from an outlying middle school because he was being bullied. And when his mom picked him up 2 weeks after he was at the club, she looked at him that night and brought him home, and they were having dinner. And she said, "Tell me what the difference is. You are no longer sad. You're no longer depressed." And he said, "Isn't it obvious? It's the Boys and Girls Club." She came back to us the next day to tell us about that. He had been being bullied so badly at the other school that he was depressed. He was not wanting to go to school. He was failing his classes. And he told his mom that he found his home at the Boys and Girls Club. And there are 2 parents in that house, and he is thriving. He's found friends. He's participating in activities. Not every kid, by definition, needs the activities that we provide, but there's something about coming to a place, a building that is dedicated to kids, the only building in town that is dedicated to kids, that's solely dedicated to kids being kids. And that's what we provide, is that opportunity where we come at them. There are parents that overschedule their kids. There are parents that are not available to be home. There are kids that are going home and taking care of their siblings. And when you walk into the Boys and Girls Club and you can be a kid and you can have fun, you can learn, you can be engaged, there's something magical about that.
Well, going home and taking care of other siblings is certainly not a new phenomenon. People have been doing that for eons. So, I know people that grew up on farms that used to take care of their siblings and so on, while their parents were out in the fields and so on. So the fact that these kids are going home and taking care of, our 2 daughters are 8 years apart. When both of my wife and I were working, Beth came home and she took care of Allison till we got home and so on. And she did that without any assistance from any outside people or so on. It just, we're looking at, I looked at $25,000 and $23,000, I think, is the cost of this. And I'll address this to Mary Ann. Where's the funding coming from? Has this been budgeted for?
Yes, this is an extension of a contract, so it was included in the 2020 budget.
What line item was that?
So the one program that's valued at $23,000 is included in the municipal court budget, and the other one is included in, basically, it's called an unclassified budget. It used to be part of council, and then one council didn't want it in their budget, and they didn't want a whole bunch of things in their budget, so they made us create a non-council budget that we called unclassified, and so that's what it's called, unclassified.
Part of how we got there was that when we originally started to talk about this program or look to continue it, there was some serious opposition from within prior incantations of the Finance Committee and even within a number of council members because there wasn't measurable results. And so conditioned upon this becoming like a contract for services, the peer court and these services that were both supported by the community and the police department to engage kids that otherwise may find themselves, I guess I would say adrift and, prone to outside influences that are decidedly negative. And so we tasked the former director of the Boys and Girls Club to bring us a plan with some measurable results. And then we went over and toured the club to see what the kids were doing there on a given night. And he then was coming in every year and giving reports for how many meals they served, how many kids they impacted, what services those kids received, and, what we believe the net impact was in exchange for those dollars to see if there was value coming from that contribution and that there was some string attached to it that we expected results in exchange for our investment. And consistently, they came back every year for the 4 years in between since that time with positive results to present to the council, which I think is the presentation that Kim is talking about that's coming up at a future meeting with the new director. In Brian's absence, that hadn't been happening until they recruited somebody to replace him. But I think that now that they've gotten a lot of those things lined up, we can get those reports again. But I would have to say that I was one of the council members that was fighting that contribution when it did not have any measurement of success attached to it. And it was one of those things where without documentation of results and impact, it's hard for us to donate to one nonprofit and not a dozen others. And so we, though, did attach those strings, we got those reports, we did see the positive impact happening at the facility, and they got me to change my mind on that. And so since then, I've supported the process because I think that they're getting that impact, and now they're serving way more kids than they were then, and they're getting the same results. So that outcome has been positive. We certainly were critical to start with, but I think once we were able to see where those dollars were getting used and, how much impact a dollar was making, there's certainly not waste going on there. So that's the one thing we were concerned about is, is there some way that we could wean off this donation and, they could find alternative fund sources. But a lot of those resources are drying up as well. You see what happened at Marathon County last week with the nonprofits. And so I think that, we had resigned ourselves, given the fact that we had a contract that stated what we expect and what results we want back, and that we had been consistently getting that. We've been budgeting for it annually now for like 5 years.
But measurable results, I'm sure that the Neighbor's Place or other places could bring us measurable results if we're going to donate. They can say, well, we have this many people coming through our pantry and so like that. So measurable results is not the magic bullet for, doling out taxpayer money. And right now, we don't have any measurable results. There's no measurable results before this council, before this committee. That's supposed to be coming in the council meeting, but yet we're supposed to vote either yay or nay right now. Frankly, as it stands now, I'm going to vote nay, but if the presentation at the council meeting is convincing, I may vote yes, but right now I can't support it.
One thing that we did when we were going back and forth on whether we wanted to do it or not was we heard from Chief Hardell at the time, who said that he was willing to attest to the fact that the positive engagement that those youth are seeing at the Boys and Girls Club that was keeping them from engaging in other activity that would cause them to have to be intervening in, some negative outcome that those kids had become involved with when they didn't have that after-school support or have those, skill teachings and that homework help and that guidance to keep them on a positive path. He figured that they would spend a lot more time dealing with delinquency issues if they did not have that program at the Boys and Girls Club running in parallel with those youth. And I was surprised to hear that, but those outcomes that were demonstrated seemed to match what he was telling us back then. Linda?
It's just a suggestion, if there's ever a slow month around here, that we could have a committee of the whole meeting at the Boys and Girls
That would be
Club.
great.
I remember having meetings back there. We used to sit in the other council, well, I guess it was the same room, and debate. I'll remember Alderman Tellickson just debating the merit of even having a Boys and Girls Club. And here we are, kind of talking about their curriculum, and certainly we need to be accountable for the money that we authorize, but I guess looking back at how far you've come and how many youth you're serving, You have multiple sites. I mean, I'm just really sitting here impressed, thinking what else would a lot of these kids be doing if they didn't have such good role models and such a positive place to know they can count on, a stable place they can count on. And I think that's a big return for this small amount of money.
That was the question, and we have not, as a council, toured the club in like 5 years, but we certainly could set something up if the council's interested in doing that. Some evening, last time we went over the summer, they're a little busier in the summer when school's out, and so we went so that we could see the maximum impact happening.
That would be
So-
great. Our doors are always open.
Okay, sounds good. With that, does anyone else have any questions for Kim? Okay. And we had a motion and a second on the floor already. Do we not take the motion? Okay. So then, given that, do we have a motion then to approve the funding for item 4?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Nutting, second by Martins. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, we'll record one opposed. Item number 5 is discussion of possible action regarding the renewal of the Wausau Boys and Girls Club contract for the peer court program. This is the one that's funded out of our municipal court budget that deals with juvenile court issues. Kim, did you want to talk about peer court a little
Sure.
bit?
Yep, that would be great. So I just want to clarify that peer court is invoiced as we use it. So if we don't get referrals, we're not invoicing for it. So our invoices this year has been decreased significantly. So right now, we are serving very minimal kids. There has been changes to how the program is used because the school district has gone to a restorative justice program. So kids are getting referred right in the school. So the number of citations are down in the city, which is a great thing. So the 23,000 may be the maximum budget, but we haven't reached that for a couple of years, and we're glad to see that. The peer court is designed to help kids between the ages of 12 and 17 years old with a City of Wausau citation come to the Boys and Girls Club and participate in life skills classes. And the idea behind those are really teaching accountability, respect, responsibility, apologies, community service, to make sure that when they successfully complete that program, that this citation is expunged from their record unless they reoffend. So if you are 12 years old and you get a disorderly conduct or retail theft, you can come to municipal court, you plead guilty, the judge determines that you are an appropriate fit for the program, refers you to the program, and you complete the program successfully, you get a successful completion, and then we invoice for those services. We invoice for those staff services, and that's it. So right now, we have actually one kid who is in the program. He has extreme anxiety, so he is unable to participate with other kids. He can't even be at the Boys and Girls Club because he can't handle it. He has an altered school day, and so his mom is actually attending the classes with him to make sure that it's successful to get it expunged from his record. The last class that we had that was even full was March of this year. So, and that was with 6 kids. So we're looking at a very minimal amount of kids right now. We'd like to see those referrals increase. We'd like to be able to utilize that service because we know that it really works for our kids. On average, about 85% of the kids do not reoffend on an annual basis. We haven't, but this past year, we just haven't had the referrals that we need to say we're able to use the $23,000. So budgeting that even for next year, we would like to see those referrals, but we don't know that we will.
Okay. Any questions? Go ahead, Dennis.
What entails the program? I mean, once somebody gets busted for something, and instead of being put in our judicial system, so what does he do to complete the program?
Sure. So when we have typically 6 or more referrals, we will hold a youth court, and the kids are the jurors. We invite volunteer kids. It would historically have been past offenders, but because we haven't had referrals for so long, it would be volunteers either from within the club or from the schools that would come, and they would have a peer court training, and they would decide the fate of this kid. And it mandatory is at least 5 weeks of life skills classes twice a week. So they come to the Boys and Girls Club twice a week, and they do those activities and those lessons. It's based on Boys and Girls Clubs of America evidence-based curriculum called Smart Moves, and we also use street law curriculum, and that's really to make sure that kids understand the consequences of the choices that they're making. The jury can decide that the kids have to do community service, and that can be anywhere that we find appropriate in the community, whether that's going to the neighbor's place, whether that's making dog toys, whether that's helping to clean up on the highway, whether that's doing something for the Boys and Girls Club. Our favorite is our neighborhood litter sweep and getting our kids out in the kind of the North 2nd Street area. When they successfully complete those classes and those activities, we have a final essay that they have to do some reflection on what they learned. It always comes back to, I just had no idea that this was the impact that this had. And then we send a letter back to court and back to them and say that they were successful in their completion. We've actually had 18-year-old soon-to-be either Army or Marines come back and say, I can't join the military until I get this letter. I lost the letter you gave me. And so we have to go back and find that letter. But that one citation can hold them up from joining the military. We want to make sure that they are successful in having those opportunities and not letting a poor decision when they were 12 or 13 years old hang up their success as they are becoming responsible, caring adults.
Well, that's good to hear, and I can assure him if that gentleman goes in the Marine Corps, they will provide him all the structure he needs. I know that for a fact.
Very true, very true. Okay, with that, do we have a motion then to approve the renewal of the Peer Court program? Motion by Smith, is there a second? Second by Lawrence. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries. Thanks, Kim.
Thank
for
you very
coming in.
much.
Item number 6 is discussion and possible action regarding the 2020 revenue schedule. Marianne will walk us through that.
Yep, so we, as a matter of course, adopt this every year. And then throughout the year, oftentimes we'll encounter additional changes. So for example, this past year, we made changes during the year for the parking, and you just made changes for fire at, I believe it was the last council meeting. So this would be the 2020 schedule. In talking to some of the departments, I understand that there will be some additional changes coming in the near future. The airport is looking at changing the T-hanger rent, and in talking to inspections, they will be making some modifications once the housing code
Is adopted.
Is adopted.
Okay.
So there will be some changes coming up in the near future as well. Again, we just
Yeah.
bring those as needed.
Sure, well, this will at least give us a starting point for the year, and it didn't look like a lot of the other ones had changed, so.
Right. Yeah, there's not a lot of changes this year.
Okay, questions for Marianne? Go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of went dizzy looking at the changes, and I found one that went from 100 to 106, and some different ways of getting revenue, but there wasn't much that had changed, and some hadn't changed since 1998. Is that okay? It just
Yeah,
seems
so
like
we work, some of the changes we really can't change if there's an ordinance or a state statute that specifies a maximum amount. Also, there is some evaluation because state law says for licenses, for example, you're not supposed to charge more than you think it costs you to issue the license. I'm trying to think of another example. There was recently a court case on photocopy charges. We had been charging more, and then we had to go back to the court or whatever it was because of some court case. So the departments do evaluate it every year.
Yep. Okay. Do we have a motion then to adopt the fee schedule? Motion by Smith, is there a second? Second by Lawrence. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries. Item number 7 is discussion and possible action on the purchase of 117 East and 119 East Chella Street for $32,000. And you've got some documentation in the packets on this one. It looks like the adjacent property owner near the yard waste site would like to sell us a couple small parcels to expand our yard waste offerings eventually, and we've got Eric Lindman with us to talk about that. Do you want to walk us through the interaction with the neighbor?
Yeah, so, typically throughout the year, I'll get, maybe once a month, I'll have different property owners throughout the city asking if the city's interested in purchasing property. So this wasn't unusual. This is a property, there's actually 2 properties. One is vacant and one has a house and a garage on it. The homeowner came in at the beginning of September, took the information, did a little bit of research on it, but didn't really take any action. They came back and then came back a third time, so I had them put it in writing. They were consistent with it. The city, we actually looked at the Yardway site when I first came on about 4 years ago on how we would expand it and what areas that we actually need. And it was something, I guess, that was looked at in the past as well. So expanding the Yardway site, it is used 8 to 9 months out of the year. It's very beneficial not only to us as an entity, but also I think the citizens throughout the city. And so she approached us. It's it's a reasonable price for the property. She's committed to selling to the city directly, and so we brought this forward. Thought that at this point in time, our department would go ahead and demolish the buildings, we'd vacate the land, and then over time, develop a plan to expand the property and help out with the Yardway site and expand the area.
Okay. Certainly makes sense. Mr. Nutting, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Lindman, with this expansion, what would you do for a buffer between the next neighbor over so that we are not moving this on down?
Right. Yeah, it's a very good question. I mean, we haven't really looked at how we buffer that or any what we're proposing. It could be a fence, it could be just a wall. We haven't really looked at that, but I think as we develop that site, as we expand it, it's not a huge site, it's about 1/3 of an acre, and so, but it would expand our Yardway site by about 40%. So compared to what we're using now, it's pretty significant.
And I probably would suggest something of a prettyish type fence or something that is
Sure, we could definitely look at that,
not
yes.
something with stripes going through it or, but,
Right, yeah, I don't
something-
think it would be a chain link. I think it
Yeah.
would be more of a screening type fence.
Some
and-
shrubbery
yep.
and some arborvitae
Right.
grow up. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have questions? Go ahead, Dennis.
Mr. Lemon, what backs up to this property? Is the city own this property that backs up to it?
No, there's property to the back of this. I don't know who owns that, Dennis.
Okay.
Yep. So it's not quite as deep as our current property that we own, but there are property owners that are on the backside there, but I'm not exactly sure what's there.
Okay. Well, we have to change the zoning at all because this is going to go from residential to, what would it go to?
That I'm not quite sure. I haven't looked into that to see if we specifically had to change that or what the use would be. I don't know. I can't answer that question right now.
Okay.
All right. The price certainly is fair, given what we've been paying for real estate around town in the last couple of years. So is there a motion to approve the purchase of the 2 parcels from the neighbor? Motion by Nutting. Is there a second? Second by Lawrence. Further discussion or questions? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None are opposed. That motion carries as well. Thanks,
Thank
Eric.
you.
Item number 8 is discussion and possible action on the purchase of animal impoundment services agreement with the Humane Society of Marathon County Incorporated. I think that we approved this previously, according to our packets, and we are actually getting it back to approve the contract as a 1-year instead of a 2-year, because Everest Metro was not sure that they wanted to commit to a full 2-year. Is that where we're at?
Correct. Post the last approval of that contract, I had a meeting with Chief Schultz of Everest Metro, who expressed his concern about a 2-year contract because he's receiving information from his elected officials that they're struggling with the price of cat impoundment because this is a non-dog stray contract. So any animal that's not a dog and is considered a stray animal at $185 per animal. And so my concern at that point is we're tied into a 2-year contract. It represents both the non-dog strays that the city of Wausau anticipates having. It also addresses all the animals that Everest Metro anticipates. And if we ended up 2 years and they opted out the 2nd year, we'd be prepaying for a little over 100 animals at $185 a piece was our
Which
estimate.
we may never take there, right? I
Which
mean, it
which
would-
may never go there. We're protected in the sense that we get a credit for future years with them, or if we end our contract with them, they would reimburse us that cost. It just made sense to me to protect us, not putting money on loan with the Humane Society, that I bring that back to you and ask for a 1-year contract, which, by the way, is fine with management and the board with the Humane Society. I met with them, discussed it. They felt like this was the appropriate solution.
Well, yeah, and we don't have a problem looking at it every year either. I think we just done it for the ease of expediency to do it every other year, but I don't think we have a problem considering it every year either. I certainly hope that they would see the light and be willing to continue our shared arrangement, though, because it's been very successful.
I think that the shared arrangement for the use of the humane officer and how that works is not in jeopardy. They're
Good.
very satisfied with that. It's
I was
simply.
hoping this wasn't step one of that.
No,
so-
I don't believe that that's the case, but I can appreciate where people look at the cost of stray cats to a community, and it's significant. And, at some point, I'd be more than happy to address with both Public Health and Safety and this Finance Committee, because I think it affects both, what the choices are. You folks will set the policy for how we handle stray cats, and we'll carry that policy out, and I think there's lots of options.
I think that's a discussion worth having. I mean, obviously, we're into a new budget year, but, if there's options out there that may be less expensive than sheltering them indefinitely, because they do keep them an awfully long time out there, that makes sense for us to talk about, so.
I would just, in the copy of the new contract in front of you, there is a typo. It references a 2-year contract and then gives a 1-year time frame. We're going to change the 2 to a 1.
1 year on all. Okay,
Correct.
all right. So do we have a motion then to reapprove this contract with a 1-year term instead of a 2? Motion by Lawrence, is there a second? Second by Martins. Go ahead, Dennis.
We share our animal control officer with Everest Metro.
Correct. Their contract with us, Mary Ann, you might correct me, I don't have this. I think it's 16 or 18% of the overall cost is what we bill them annually.
When we pick up a stray cat out of our city limits and take it to the agency or the Humane Society, does Metro get a bill for that, or how does that work?
No, if a cat comes from the city of Wausau, it's logged as, because it's all prepaid at the beginning of the year, so we track where the cats or the animals that go to the Humane Society, what jurisdiction they come from. And near the end of the year, we bill Everest Metro for their number of animals times the cost per animal.
Okay, but we just keep track, and then we do one billing a year then, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. So with a motion and a second then to approve the 1-year contract, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries.
Thank you. And as a side note, the 2 new dogs, they're not real tough names. One is Max and one is Aster.
Okay. But not Shredder.
That's true.
So, we like that one. Let's see, and then item number 9 is discussion and possible action regarding the October General Fund Financial Report, and Mary Ann will walk us through those
Yeah.
results.
I see that we have forgot to change the title on the top of the financials from September to October, sorry about that. Again, things from a revenue perspective are still looking very good. We, right now, continue to do very well in investment income. We're nearly $1 million over our budget. Again, rates are starting to decline again, so we did increase the budget for 2020, but I doubt that we would, actually achieve that kind of revenue in 2020. Our permitting fees are continuing to go strong, and we continue to lag in municipal court fines. From an expense standpoint, again, we're seeing some good positive variance, mainly in the general government area. But things look fine for public safety. Again, a little iffy on the transportation area, and a lot of that will depend on what the month of December looks like. So we will keep an eye on that, but again, I'm expecting that we will end the year with a profit of somewhere between $750,000 and $1 million.
Excellent. Questions for Mary Ann on the report? If not, we'll place her report on file, and that's our last item then for tonight. A motion to adjourn would be appropriate. Motion by Smith, is there a second? Second by Martins. Members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, we'll stand adjourned, and then Common Council will start in this chamber at 6:30. Thank you, everyone.